On manufactured housing. So we've done episodes on this before, and we're revisiting it because it's really a big part of what the future of affordable housing might be. So there's the ability to deliver and reduce cost, and also produce a high quality product. So we're going to get into that in some detail, but we're kind of excited because there's innovative work coming out, and innovative work coming out with the groups that are going to be speaking here. I think we're all pleased to know that Sarah Jarick is joining us as the moderator of this section. And she's, we all know her as the person who was the first director of the Office of Housing Counseling at HUD, and did lots of work that really promoted both our work and the opportunities and how we see our work and help shape it. Sarah's gone on to do other things now, and she's a consultant working with national and local housing programs. She teaches at the New York University in the law and public policy schools, and she's also a non-resident fellow at the Urban Institute for Housing Finance Policy. But we're glad that she took some of her time from her schedule to be able to join us here. Welcome, Sarah.
What?
Sarah, we can't hear you. Not yet.
Not sure what the problem is.
The problem is solved. That's good.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll lean into my microphone. I'm thrilled to be here today. As many of you know, I love National Housing Resource Center. I think it's made such a difference in the housing counseling industry, and your participation in the policy efforts by listing jobs on the job board and by just being here today has really transformed this industry into something that is an integral part of housing decisions now. I am pleased to be here in my hat as consultant to Next Step. We're going to talk about some late developments in manufactured housing, and it's a subject near and dear to my heart. So I'll let you advance the slide, and we're going to talk about new ideas, and so hopefully there'll be some things and ideas that you haven't thought of or heard before. Next slide. Our purpose today is twofold. We have resources for counselors and that can help you if your clients can benefit from manufactured housing as a housing option. We're also going to feature some cutting edge programs that Next Step and NPHS have been working on to give you a view of all the different ways that counseling agencies can be involved in the process of having manufactured housing being a more traditional part of the housing decision. Next slide. I'm very proud to introduce this panel to you. You saw a little, their titles are there. I just want to say a few words and then they will go on without introduction after this. Kelly is a former housing counselor. She's a licensed mortgage lender and a homeownership counseling expert, and she's answered a whole lot of my questions. Kelly has over 20 years in affordable housing, and I love working with her. Grant Beck is Vice President of Strategic Partnerships at Next Step, and he oversees matters related to development and fundraising, strategic communication, and affordable housing policy and advocacy. He's an expert in many things and a wonderful resource. And finally, Roshana Foy is a manufactured housing program manager, worked with MPHS since 2018. assisting current and future homeowners. She's now working in a new division, Homes by MPHS LLC, and she's taken on the role of bringing manufactured housing to the urban landscape in major cities. So you're going to hear from all of them. As we go along, please put your questions in the Q&A, and we'll be sure to get to all of them. Next slide, please. Just give you a little overview to build on what Bruce was saying. Over 22 million people live in manufactured homes today. It's not a tiny part of the market. Every year, more than 110,000 new single-family manufactured homes are ordered and delivered. And the all-in costs of manufactured homes, including the land, winds up being as a national average in the mid 250,000 range. For some of you, that's a very expensive proposition, and it'll be much cheaper in areas where land is cheaper. For others of you, that's incredibly affordable, and the cost might be a little higher than what we're saying. But as an average, it's generally 30 to 40% less than the cost of a similarly built, site-built home. Next slide. So why are we talking about manufactured housing today? And I'll say that it's about to have a moment. I won't say it's having a moment right this second, although some of the panelists may disagree. But I think that all the stars are aligning for manufactured housing to be a really important solution to the affordable housing problem. Federal policies and Fannie and Freddie are increasing their support of manufactured housing. There's a growing recognition of the unbelievable environmental benefits, which occur both in the construction of the housing, but also for the operation. And the utility costs to the homeowner are substantially less than comparable home, site-built home. One thing that I've really made it my mission to talk about is that manufactured housing doesn't just belong in rural and exurban communities. It's absolutely a possibility for infill in urban areas and suburbs. They are also, of course, common in resident parks where a bunch of manufactured homes are together. And more, there are resident-owned communities where the park is actually owned by the residents, not by a third party. Manufactured housing is not for everyone, and we can go deeper into this in the Q&A. Your client may not have access to land. Your client may be in an area that's more than 50 miles from a manufacturing facility, which may make it too expensive to transport. Your client may be just daunted by some of the decisions that they'll have to make. But it is a very important option in challenging market conditions, and one that the residents of manufactured housing are generally very pleased that they've made that choice. So we're pleased to talk to you about it today. Next slide, please. And I'll turn it over to Kelly to talk about next step.
Well, thank you, Sarah, and thank you to Bruce and Ellie for the invitation to be with you today. It's a privilege to be here. And we've been a guest on the call before, but for those of you who don't know us, Next Step's mission is to put sustainable homeownership within reach of everyone while transforming the manufactured housing industry through consumer education, affordability, and energy efficiency. While working in rural Appalachia, our founder, Stacy Epperson, saw homeowners struggling with their old mobile homes. They were upside down on loans or behind on sky-high utility costs. And recognizing the need for safe, sustainable, and affordable housing, Stacy began to question how to bring high-performing new factory-built housing to communities across the country. And this is how Manufactured Housing Done Right was born. And Manufactured Housing Done Right includes prepared and supported home buyers, Energy Star homes on permanent foundations, reduced total costs of homeownership, meaning lower operating, maintenance, and utility costs. And we believe that borrowers should have access to fair loans that enable them to earn equity and preserve their assets. Next slide. So today we want to introduce you to the Next Step Resource Library. And right now, Grant has posted a link. I'm going to invite you to just start exploring. Use the link there in the chat box, and I will continue on, but I invite you to just look and see what we have to offer in the resource library. And as the VP of Homeownership, it's my role to empower home buyers. And one way we are accomplishing manufactured housing done right is by supporting our partners and driving consumer demand by bringing awareness to manufactured housing and its opportunities. So feel free to browse as I continue. Next slide, please. Why should you use the resource library? Consider using the resource library to introduce your colleagues to another type of housing that they may have not thought about before. You can also help raise awareness of today's manufactured homes by sharing resources that might be appropriate for your clients. Many of these resources are offered in both English and Spanish, and new resources are frequently included into the library. One tool that's coming soon, we're going to offer an MH 101, which is a quick basic introduction to today's manufactured housing. Counselors can also increase their comfort level when speaking on manufactured housing and have a better understanding of what manufactured housing is and is not. And of course, you are going to be able to keep an update on the latest financing options that are available for MH as well. Next slide. So we have the library categorized into two sections: professional, for today's purpose would be the housing counselor, and the home buyer. And as a counselor, finding effective solutions for your clients is essential. With the right tools and resources, you can provide support and guidance to clients to help them overcome their challenges. There may be strategies in this resource library that can help you meet the goals with your clients, and whether or not you're specializing in group education or individual counseling, you will find resources here that would apply. So don't hesitate to delve into these resources that are available to you for free. We want you to use them, share them, and put them into practice. Next slide. For home buyers, we have created a home buyer guide, which actually walks the consumer through the process of purchasing a manufactured home. We also have a tool, Down Payment Seeker, which is a tool that the consumer can go in and put their location and answer a few brief questions about their situation, and then any down payment assistance that the consumer might be eligible for in their community would be matched. And there's a list that the client would then have, and it kind of takes the homework out on the client's part, because all of these down payment assistance products are allowed, they do allow manufactured housing. And then of course, we also have the top 10 factory built facts about for factory built homes. And we're going to delve into that in our next slide. So the two resources I would like to highlight today are the top 10 factory built facts, and then the program guide for counseling and education. Let's start with the top 10 facts. And this tool was produced based on findings that we received from housing counselors and consumers. And it was really meant to address their concerns. So for example, you might see safety and durability. This came up among one of the top concerns. And so the fact is that these homes are built and inspected to meet federal and regional standards where the home is going to be sited. They're also built to withstand hurricane force winds, fire, snow loads, and other natural disasters. So I would invite you to look at this fact sheet in its entirety, download it, share it with clients, incorporate it into your workshops. The second resource that I would like to highlight today is the program guide. And this is a guide that addresses common questions and helps to increase the counselor's confidence recommending manufactured housing as a viable option. Through this guide, you will learn a basic understanding of manufactured housing, how homes are financed, how you can integrate manufactured housing into your day-to-day counseling services, and you're going to have access to quick facts and resources at your fingertips when you need them. Next. So as I mentioned earlier, I am charged with bringing awareness to the opportunities that manufactured housing brings. One way we are accomplishing this is by using social media. And we're using this to drive awareness of manufactured housing in our communities where we have developments that we are working on. So social media is a great way to reach a wider audience, and here's how we are using this to drive consumer demand. Ebony, would you mind to start the quick video?
Imagine owning an affordable home that is customized to your unique style. That's what you get when you buy a manufactured home. With a factory-built home, you'll save money on construction costs without giving up quality. And because homes are energy efficient, you'll also save up to 30% on utility bills. Each home is built. Oops. You save and put money in your pocket. Have more.
Well, I think you get the idea. And again, this may be added to our resource library in the near future. So you can stay tuned and look for that. And at this time, I would like to pass the presentation over to my colleague, Grant Beck, and he's going to discuss partnerships and development opportunities with Next Step.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelly. And I really also want to thank the folks at NHRC for putting together this webinar today. So my colleague Kelly has done a really excellent job of talking you through the tools and resources available to both prospective home buyers and counselors. I kind of wanted to take this opportunity to zoom out a little bit and look at that within the context of our broader work with a larger ecosystem, which includes housing developers, housing advocates, and municipalities. So Next Step works through 4 distinct strategic lenses, the first of which being empowered home buyers. And I think Kelly has really, excuse me, touched upon this already, but really making sure that folks have the education and knowledge needed to make smart decisions when it comes to the finance and purchase of homes, really always a cornerstone of Next Step's work. The next area where we work is policy change. And a few things that we're working on include removing zoning barriers and land use barriers so that we can use more manufactured homes across the country. For those of you familiar with zoning, it's very patchwork, it's very local. And so, you know, it's a long and difficult process to work with different municipalities and different partners. So we're engaging at the local, state, and federal level to see how we can remove those barriers so that we can get more homes on the ground so that those empowered home buyers can take advantage of the cost savings afforded by manufactured homes. The third area is a new sales ecosystem. I'll talk more about this when I get specifically into some of the developments that we're working on. But some of you may be familiar with manufactured housing and kind of the old model of a retail operation, very similar to shopping for a car, where you might walk onto a lot, work with a salesperson, tour a couple of homes before you're kind of put into a high pressure sales situation. We're really looking to kind of reshape that process for manufactured housing and really make it the same as buying any single family home in any other neighborhood across the country. And the final area is zero energy ready homes. One of the cornerstones of Next Step work is built on energy efficiency. We do this not just to be good stewards for the environment and for our planet, but of course it makes a huge difference for our prospective home buyers as well. Being able to stay in your home with lower utility costs month by month really adds up to what it means to have sustainable home ownership. So we really are on a path to see just how energy efficient we can get when it comes to manufactured homes. And all of these are built on a foundation of increasing housing equity, which includes closing the racial wealth gap and better serving underserved communities and persistent poverty regions. Next slide, please. So I kind of wanted to highlight two distinct examples of our work. And we're going to start first in Hagerstown, Maryland. I appreciated what Sarah said at the outset, where manufactured housing is about to have a moment. And I would certainly agree with that. And we'd like to see more of these types of projects happening across the country. But for this first project, we're working with a developer who is primarily a LIHTC developer. This is the first time they're doing new single-family homes as a development opportunity. And we're doing 241 single-family homes in a 5,000 square foot lots. These homes are what you might hear referred to as cross-mod, but essentially what that means is it's a HUD code manufactured homes, but it's built to a standard that qualifies for 30-year financing comparable to site-built homes from Fannie and Freddie on the secondary market. The neighborhood meets enterprise green community specifications and zoning resistance. There really was none for this particular project. Local zoning officials really recognized the product as a single family home development solution. And so that's also part of what makes this project really unique. We're excited for this particular project. 241 new affordable homes. We're coming in at about 100,000 less than comparable site-built homes in new subdivisions going up in the area. But with the proximity to Washington, D.C., we really want this to be a case statement and a test. We want to educate policymakers, legislative staff, and kind of show them what's possible through the use of factory-built homes. So all those things that Sarah pointed out earlier that, we're getting a lot of attention right now, and we want to make sure that we're showing off what can be done and how it can be done right in this space. Next slide, please. The next example, I think, kind of is a good parody to new home subdivision greenfield development. And this is with infill housing in Petersburg, Virginia. So these are going to be 17 single-family infill homes, in a historically Black neighborhood. It's part of a larger community revitalization project. We're working with the same developer that we're doing those 241 homes in Maryland. This is going to include a multifamily component. We're going to be revitalizing a local school in the community as well. But again, it's critically important for us as an organization working in nonprofit housing, working in affordable housing, that when we're bringing new homes to a community, we want to serve residents who have been living in that community. We're not looking to gentrify neighborhoods and bring in new folks. We really want to work with residents, work with housing counselors and other folks to ensure that these homes are affordable and are being bought by people who have lived in that community for perhaps generations. Next slide, please. So, we really see home quality, equitable finance opportunities, and increased energy efficiency as the cornerstones of housing sustainability. And we're hoping to achieve that with today's manufactured homes. These aren't buzzwords for Next Steps, but rather the part of the work that we do every day. We're invested in creating homeownership opportunities for everyone. No one prevailing demographic rents, owns, or lives in manufactured housing. We also, recognize that as you guys kind of absorb this information and take it back to your organizations and back to your own work, that, there's no one single form of housing that's a silver bullet to address our current crisis. But we really believe that manufactured housing can be a scalable part of this solution. So as next steps, we'd encourage you to check out our resource library that Kelly shared. And if you have any questions or consultation needs, please feel free to reach out to any Next Step staff member as well. So with that, I am going to pass it over to my colleague, Roshana at NPHS.
Hello, and I am definitely happy to be here. Thank you everyone for joining us. And yes, I am Roshana Foy here at Homes by NPHS. We are a social enterprise of NPHS, which is Neighborhood Partnership Housing Services in Southern California. So we are about 45 minutes east of Los Angeles. And so basically what we have done is incorporated manufactured homes into our affordable housing program here. And so how did we determine that the market was good for opportunities for manufactured homes? Well, of course, here in Southern California, affordability of housing is one of those things that is not very common here. And so just kind of looking at what product is available, what can we do in our neck of the woods to create affordable housing. And so in our research, we initially started with modular homes. And then we found out that even manufactured housing gave even more of a savings. And so what we have determined with our projects is we have a savings of 20 to 30% over traditional built housing just by using off-site construction. And so that is one of the major reasons why we've moved forward with manufactured homes in a lot of our infill projects. And then how is it important to our organization? It has become a vital role as we have built partnerships with various municipalities. We have really determined that being able to provide the manufactured homes in a timely manner, meaning cutting the cost of construction for the homes, we're able to get more families into homes faster. And so if there's another slide, you can go ahead and change the slide there. We have partnered with Next Step actually in being able to expand our manufactured home options and the reach and the things that we're able to do and provide, again, quality housing for our clients. And so our counselors do a great job as they're coming through the counseling process and being able to then work with, again, the various municipalities that we partnered with. We have cities. San Bernardino right now is our biggest city that we actually have infill lots that throughout the city, we are able to infill with the manufactured homes for their projects. And so building a partnership with that city has really enabled us to create a win-win situation where the city therefore now has lots that are no longer vacant. And we've created affordable home ownership as well, using manufactured homes for people who would typically not be able to afford homes in a major city. And so again, just really looking at this and changing the landscape and the mindset of people from manufactured homes being more of rural communities or parks and those types of things, where we're now putting them and mixing them in to communities that are already established, and then being able to move families into the homes. And so that is something that we have done, and we have, I want to say, without really patting ourselves on the back, we've created success around it. And we're just happy to be able to share what we're doing and what we're learning from our struggles here as to getting through various red tapes, getting through the stigma of manufactured homes, what they are not, and then just the education process of our clients, And again, just really being able to create safe and affordable homes for our families. And so just really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all today. Thank you so much. And with that, I will turn this back over to Sarah.
Okay. Let's see, I think Roshana had a couple more pictures if we can scroll through the slides again. Thank you. They're gorgeous. Thank you so much. We'll take questions, and I'm going to ask, I'm going to start working down the Q&A list. I'm not going to go exactly in order. We have terrific questions here. I want to start with the last question we got. What do you mean by infill? Grant, well, actually, I might have used the term first, so I'll take a stab, but Grant and Roshana may chime in. In an urban setting where you have vacant lots in the middle of a built environment, those are usually referred to as infill lots. They're very difficult to reuse because it's inefficient for a traditional builder to do that. Grant, do you have a better definition?
No, I think that's about the same read that I have of it, and I see Roshana nodding, so I think she's good there too. Yeah, it's one of those things, and I would say urban communities, suburban communities, you'll find yourself with empty lots that need to be filled. Obviously, an empty lot isn't generating tax revenue for the city. It can lead to blight and other things, and so Sarah already said, but it can be really difficult to kind of go in and do onesie twosie projects for developers, right? They're looking for volume. And so infill housing can be a very difficult thing to do. And so that additional cost efficiencies and time savings of manufactured housing can be really helpful when you're doing any sort of infill housing opportunity.
Thank you. Okay, and let's see. Phyllis Logan asked an interesting question, a couple questions. Can investors purchase and resell manufactured homes? And she later says, or make them rental units. Grant, do you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, I think Phyllis, they certainly could. Just like, I mean, most of you guys, I'm sure on the webinar are aware that happening across the country right now, we're seeing a pattern of this, right? We're seeing institutional investors come in, buy up single family homes and convert them into rentals, right? And of course, this not only makes it more difficult for kind of everyday folks looking to buy a home to compete when these investors come in with cash and are able to buy homes off the market and convert them to rentals. And of course, folks who might have bought those homes, they're missing out on the equity opportunity of home ownership. So, in theory, if we build enough of these homes, institutional investors will be able to come in and buy them. But really, I think, that's where I know that Congress is looking at this right now. I think there's a lot of opportunities at the federal level, certainly at the state level as well, to kind of curb this behavior. But yes, we could see that happening just like it happens in the site build space.
And I would note that it tends to happen, I think Grant said this, but I want to emphasize, it's not so much with individual homes that we've seen, but with parks, where equity investors are buying whole parks from mom and pop owners and then raising the prices. And that's a problem that a lot of state legislatures are looking at right now. My friend Roy has a really great question. How many homes do we need to build per year in order to purchase directly from the manufacturer? Through past experiences, we found that we can build less costly in the traditional fashion, that is, than if we have to purchase from a retail dealer. Roshana, do you have a sense of what it would take to purchase for a nonprofit to purchase directly from the factory?
And I would really just encourage Roy to, number one, as you're building your relationship with the manufacturer and the dealer in which you're working with, let them know your vision. so that they can buy into your vision and support you in that vision. And so as a licensed dealer here in the state of California, what we're doing is, as we're even partnering with other nonprofit organizations, there is the discount, that we're definitely offering and passing along so that they then can support their vision and move forward with providing affordable housing. So that's just really something that I would encourage you to do. Again, because if we're all in this together and we're all trying to just move in one direction, just being able to have that buy-in from your local dealers and manufacturers will actually be able to, overcome that hurdle.
Great, thank you. We have a question. What happens if a manufactured home is bought and built on leased land? What if the does the homeowner still own the home and have to find a move to? Kelly, I'm going to ask you to handle this one. It's a tricky issue.
So when a home is placed on leased land, most generally it's going to be financed with just what we sometimes refer to as a home only loan, or you may have heard it referred to as a chattel loan. And so the buyer would own the home, but not the land. And when a home is financed with a home only or chattel loan, there are less consumer protections for the buyer than what there might be versus a mortgage. So the buyer would definitely own the home. But your question, you were kind of breaking up there, Sarah, but I think I got the question. And something about moving the home.
What if the lease ends? Does the homeowner still own the home and have to find a new place to move it to?
I would suppose that if you don't have the opportunity to renegotiate the lease, you may be faced with having to move your home. But typically, we have found that manufactured homes are not really intended to be moved frequently or often. And so that could be a concern. Grant, do you have anything you would want to add to that?
Yeah, and Sarah kind of touched on this a little bit in a previous question too, but and unfortunately, this is something that we do see, right? In situations in manufactured housing communities, and of course, older mobile home parks as well. What you may have, aside from just leases running out too, is of course that sometimes that these residents are faced with maybe second or third generation owners who are no longer interested in kind of operating the community or operating the park, and so. In a lot of states, particularly in the southeastern United States, there's not a lot of recourse for folks who are living in these communities. And while you do own the home that the land is sited on, Kelly already touched upon it. Mobile home is a bit of a misnomer. For most folks, it is prohibitively expensive to move a home. It can also damage the home's foundation as well. So that's why we're seeing things if like Rock USA's model, which is Resident Owned Communities USA, they're based out of New Hampshire. They're working on trying to get more states to adopt opportunity to purchase legislation so that if an owner of a community or a park is interested in selling, those residents have the opportunity to purchase the park and kind of own it as a cooperative model, so that they're not found in a situation where, unfortunately, they're no longer housed anymore. So, Sarah, I'm not sure if you have any additional thoughts there either, but.
Well, I think the question points to a really important issue, which is whether your client is able to lease land or buy land. I would just add that there are a number of advocacy groups that are working on state legislation to give leased owners the right of first refusal, or to give them notice before the lease expires, and other protections. And actually, Fannie and Freddie are have introduced protections into the leases that they finance on a national basis. So it's an issue that's important, and I'm glad you raised it. Sarah Briggs has a couple questions I'm going to lump together, and she's talking about the sales ecosystem. She says, we still have the used car salesman environment here in Montana for the most part. It is changing slowly. And then she talks about, asks, what's the average cost of a home in a community? Another question is, what is the price range of the homes? And how do home sales prices in these communities compare with homes in a nearby subdivision or area? I want to start with Grant and then move to Roshana and see if Kelly will add anything.
Yeah. So, when it comes to kind of comparing the costs of a home that's going to be put on leased land, like in a community, versus a home that's going to be a fee simple transaction where it's financed with a mortgage and it's on privately owned land, certainly it will be more affordable to put a home and to buy a home in a leased community. Those are traditionally going to be what we call single section homes. They're going to be typically smaller. I would say that when working with your clients and kind of looking at available options, the whole conversation that we just had around security of land tenure in parks and communities, that's something you certainly want folks to be aware of. So while it may be kind of a less expensive option to get folks into a rental situation where they're in a park or in a community, know that depending on where you are in the country, that may not come with a whole lot of protection for those folks. And they could potentially find themselves in a situation where a park is closing or it's being sold or a community is being sold. And they're really going to have to kind of struggle to find a different housing option. In terms of, kind of comparing costs for new manufactured homes, like the community that we're doing, and I use the term community more broadly here, I should say neighborhood, we're doing in Hagerstown, we're seeing about a difference of about 100,000 compared to new site-built homes in that area. But, home costs are incredibly local. So, I would say that that would require a little bit more research in your specific area to see what those cost comparables are and what that looks like. But, I would say that generally we're finding significant savings if we're looking at building a new subdivision of manufactured homes versus a new subdivision of traditionally site-built homes.
And even to add to that, and I want to say, I thought I saw a question about the values as it relates to even resale, with especially the infill projects that we have done. The value of these homes have definitely, and I want to say exceeded our expectation, as because they're placed on permanent foundations, they are considered single family homes, so to speak. And so therefore they are gaining equity as any traditional home in the area would. And so we are just really excited, even knowing that our homeowners are getting into the homes that are affordable and then being able to gain equity and create the generational wealth that is needed. And so we've been able to really determine that moving forward and just looking at the neighborhoods and really being able to explain that to our clients that yes, you're going to gain equity as you would any other property.
Okay, thank you. Phyllis Logan has a couple of questions about the structure. One is, what's the longevity of manufactured housing? How many years would this home last? And also she asks, does infill eliminate basements? And I'm going to go to Roshana to take a first cut at those, and then
sure.
It over.
The longevity of manufactured housing we have found is the exact same as traditional built housing. So because they are just built off-site, it is the exact same materials that are being used as traditional on-site housing. Again, we're federally regulated versus houses that are built in the traditional format. They are built to local codes, meaning the city and the county. And so therefore, our standards for the off-site construction is a lot more stringent. And of course, they're built to withstand traveling down the road at about 60 miles per hour. So that even makes them a little bit more sturdy. And so when placed on the permanent foundation, they will definitely last, you know, as the homeowner cares for the home as you would any traditional home that you have to care for and make the necessary repairs. But yes, it can definitely stand the test of time as it relates to that. And then, of course, for infills, unfortunately, here in California, we don't necessarily have basements and things of that nature. They're very rare here. And then, of course, in Southern California and then inland, we're basically more desert areas. And so, again, we don't necessarily have basements, but I can say, looking at the products and speaking with other manufacturers in other states, it is an option to have your basements and the unit set with basements.
And I just follow up a question on that, which is the photographs all have been of 1-story houses. So can you do 2 and 3 stories, which are the tradition in some of the cities?
I do know that some manufacturers do 2-story manufactured homes. I myself have not seen a 3-story manufactured homes, but 2-story manufactured homes are definitely possible.
Here in New York, Bruce, we have a 20-story apartment building that was the first factory-built apartment building located in Atlantic Yards. It has had some construction litigation around it, so I won't vouch for that use, but they have figured out some ways to go higher. Grant, are you aware of any higher density models?
Yeah, I think Roshana, I think answered the question correctly. You know, it can be done with manufactured homes. I would say that when you're talking about a HUD code manufactured home that meets that federal standard that Roshana was referring to, you're mostly going to find single story homes. However, when you're talking about modular housing, which actually adheres to that local building code, you can get a little more creative. You might find some kind of duplex models. You find some more 2-story models. Again, not to say that a manufacturer won't do a 2-story home, but I would say that it's rare.
Great, thanks. We have another question. What are the price range of the homes? And I think that's probably referring to Grant and Roshana's buildings. Can you give us price ranges? Start.
Sure. Well, I can speak for here in California. And again, we are the wonderful sunshine state. So, you know, prices are a little bit more expensive than other parts of the country. But we have homes that start in the mid 80s. So $80,000 or so can get you definitely started with a home initially. Yes. Now that is, again, no land or anything included with that. So that is just the home.
Yeah, you know, it is tough to, just because pricing is so inherently local. You know, Roshana's example of how much they've been able to save in Southern California there and in the Inland Empire, you know, it won't pencil in every single market. We found that out working with nonprofit developers across the country. Sarah alluded to this as well. In places where land is a little bit cheaper, labor is a little bit cheaper, it just won't pencil every time. But really, what we're looking to do from a pricing standpoint, I would say, again, that example in Maryland that we have, we're coming in at about 100,000 less than comparable site-built housing. You know, we're really trying to support LMI folks and hit that price range, right? So that 80 to 120%, that missing middle housing. And manufactured housing, I think when you talk about the economies of scale, when you can pair that with some subsidy, maybe some down payment assistance as well from organizations that I'm sure that folks on the webinar are working with or from their own organizations, you know, that's really kind of our sweet spot. We're trying to help fill in that missing middle, which is really no longer being built in this country. So I can't give you kind of exact numbers, community over community, but, you know, we're trying to come in at a price point that we can get more folks into home ownership, first-time homeowners. So yeah, that's kind of what we're looking at there.
Thanks. Michelle, Shannon asked a couple of questions again that are a little technical. One is, are the homes pillared to the land? And the second is, how can you insure a home if it's not pillared to the land and be moved? It's then a vehicle, correct? I'm going to let Grant take a stab at this.
Yeah, so we're probably kind of talking about two different things here. So just kind of as a point of clarification. So like what Roshana and NPHS are doing in California and what we're doing in projects across the country too, we're working with fee simple homeownership transactions. So this is where a customer, just like buying a site-built home, they're purchasing the home, the land under it, and everything that goes along with that. So in those situations, and per next step specifications, all of our homes have an FHA Title II engineered foundations. So that means they're permanently affixed to the land. They qualify for FHA financing because of that FHA foundation that goes along with that. And you'll find that different loan programs, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac's loan programs, also have foundation requirements as well. But those homes are permanently affixed. It's exactly the same situation as if you were buying a traditional site-built home. On the insurance question, it sounds like we're kind of talking about homes that are going into a community or a park, where it is a little bit different. The homes are, affixed to a plot, but again, because one doesn't actually own the land underneath of you in that leased community, I'm not exactly sure what the insurance situation looks like in those communities. But again, when you're talking about a fee simple manufactured home being done in a neighborhood or in infill housing in existing communities and neighborhoods, they're going to be insured just like a typical home is. Rashawn, I'm not sure if you have anything to add on the insurance front of that.
No, everything you said is correct. Yes.
And we have a question from Imelda Rodriguez. Can you provide more information about ADU models and what is the average cost for a unit of about 480 square feet? I think Roshana is the expert on ADUs on this panel.
Yes. However, again, what Grant indicated, pricing is very hard, again, because just depending on where you are in the country, the manufacturer, and I will really say the biggest cost, honestly, goes back to something that was mentioned even before in the presentation, transportation, because depending upon how far the unit has to go from the factory to the site, and of course, with accessory dwelling units, obviously it's going on to personal property or land. But again, that transportation cost in and of itself can, almost outprice the unit, and which takes us back to sometimes, the manufactured home isn't necessarily the best for your situation. And so, I'm sorry, I can't necessarily throw out a number to say, oh, this is what it is. But again, on average, just kind of really looking at it and saying, okay, as you're talking to the manufacturer, the dealer, just really saying, okay, can you give me these numbers? And then working from there to determine if that works for your project.
I want to add that a lot of the costs will be incurred whether it's a site-built house or a manufactured house. So foundation costs, site preparation costs, attaching the utilities, all have to be done whether or not the house is built in a factory. The big difference, as Roshana mentioned, is if you have to transport the house from the factory. And that is a cost that you wouldn't incur on site build, although you are paying for the cost of transporting the materials by the contractor to the site. So whether you actually have a savings there is another question. We have a question of whether you can do a cash out refinance, and I'm going to let Kelly tackle that hard one.
I think it's going to depend on how the home is financed and how the home is sited. So if your home is sited and it's on a permanent foundation, your chances of refinancing that home are going to be much greater than if you are on a leased land. And if it's on a home only, that's much like a car loan or a title that you hold for that. Chances of doing a cash out on that type of a loan, I think, would not be great.
Thanks. The next question is a really tough one. Mobile home, it's from Shawthorne, and she asked, mobile homeowners are usually at the mercy of the landlord. How can housing counselors work with landlords or property managers that are difficult to work with? Are there any consumer protections for them? Before I turn that question over to the panel, I think I'll just give 2 cents on that. Landlords and property managers can be difficult to work with, whether you're talking about a lease community, an apartment building, or an owner of a private house that's leased out. And as you know, the tenant rights really depend on the state or the county you're located in. There's a lot of advocacy going on now about tenant rights and paying attention to the lack of tenant rights in many cases. And some of the advocacy, as I mentioned before, is really specifically around residents of parks who get bought up by, whose park gets bought up by an equity corporation. I don't know if anyone on the panel or anybody on the call has experience of working successfully with a landlord or in a less friendly state for tenant protections. Any takers?
Well, this is Ellie, and I don't have anything specific around that, but kind of partly to this question and to the previous question, if a buyer of a manufactured home is buying that with a purchase mortgage, they get all of the protections of anybody with any kind of mortgage in this country. So all of the foreclosure protections, all of the fair housing protections, all of that, it's the same, right? It's a mortgage that you use to purchase this home. If they purchased it as chattel, which means it's kind of like a personal loan, then all of those protections are not there. So they are much more at the mercy of of the lender that they got that piece of property from, because they don't get any of the protections as a homeowner per se. And that doesn't answer the question about rental, but just a little bit of background about owning the manufactured housing if you did do it with a mortgage.
Thank you. Thank you. And keep fighting that fight. It's very important to make sure that all tenants have better rights and more security in their home than they have in some places. Phyllis Logan asks if manufactured homes are accepted in the Midwest. Can you give anyone on the panel give examples of manufactured homes that you'd point to as models in the Midwest?
Yeah, I don't know, Sarah, if I can give kind of specific examples, but, I can say that, zoning really is incredibly local. And I'm linking right now in the chat to a resource that Freddie Mac actually put out that looked at kind of the cross section of where zoning is friendly for manufactured housing and where there's opportunities for infill housing development and when there's housing need as well. So, and I think if I recall correctly, the Midwest was kind of a good actually cross section of that, where manufactured housing tends to be more accepted from a zoning standpoint, and there's certainly a need for more affordable housing in the price point that's offering. So I would say that as a general rule, yes, but again, zoning is always going to be an inherently local battle. So you'd have to check with whatever municipality you're working in, state, city, local government.
you, Grant. The last question on my queue from Megan Arts. Are there DPAs available to assist with purchase of land, or do they typically just apply to the home? Kelly, do you want to take that one?
Yes. So in my experience, most of the programs that I'm aware of include the home and land together. So when it's, you know, fee simple, there are down payment assistance programs that one could access. I don't know of anything specifically for land.
Great. Any other comments on that? Let me turn it back over to Ellie then, but I have to thank the audience for some amazing questions. That was really helpful, and you gave us all a lot to think about.
Great, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, we always get great questions from the housing counseling audience, always really insightful, challenging questions. And I'm going to hand it right over to Bruce.